In 1984, TED Talks started as a conference where professionals would get together and talk with each other. Actually, they would be giving speeches and presentations to a group in the fields of technology, entertainment, and design. That is what TED stands for. These speeches were 18 minutes or less, and they were to share their ideas and inspire one another, educational reasons mostly. Since then, the conference has expanded and TED Talks are quite popular. You can access most of them online. They now cover health issues, history, science, medical issues, new findings in most any category. When you look up TED.com, you find that there are category filters that you can find exactly what you're looking for. This could even be career oriented. So TED Talks has come a long way since 1984. This week we watched a couple assigned talks from TED Talks, and then we were allowed to watch some additional ones of our choice. And the first one we were assigned to watch was by Sir Ken Robinson, who ultimately was speaking about creativity and that it is a natural part of being a human and that everybody's born with that and that it is unique and natural and that it cannot be taught. However, our educational system is not conducive to inspiring and nurturing this creativity in humans. We focus more on reading, writing, math, science, and don't allow for the creative arts, music, dance, drawing, cooking, whatever that may be. What I found really interesting is that he was talking about these children that are going through the educational system and how they ultimately are our future. How are we going to know what our future is, basically? So how are we going to be able to teach them and prepare them for something that we don't even know yet? The only way that we really can be prepared for that is to allow creativity. And so he's inspiring all of us to do that. He's using his personal stories and his humor and anecdotes about his own family and relatable experiences with other humans to get through to the audience and the listener. We really can all relate, I think, at least I know I can, to being that creative child and having been not really forced, but guided in the direction of education and focusing on these particular disciplines and not necessarily inspired to follow your heart in the artistic and creativity aspects. The other thing that I found he was really good at doing was inspiring me to want to provide that environment. You know, the public school system may not be providing the creative environment for our youth today, but his speech inspired me to provide that to my own children and other children as I can. I really liked that he used his personal experience for that and spoke also as a parent, not just as an educator, but also as a parent. The other speech was a young woman who was talking about feminism and her views on it, and not necessarily the context of feminism that most people think of, but the equal rights for all people. Not that women should do more than men or be allowed to have more than men, but that everybody should be awarded the same opportunities in the world. And I certainly agree with that. There's not a difference, really, between men and women. I mean, there's the obvious differences that she mentioned, that men are naturally and physically going to be stronger or bigger. Women can have babies, men cannot, so far, she said. However, when it comes to intellect and character and personality, the playing field is pretty equal. I watched a few other TED Talks. One was about young women in Africa who were being culturally forced to marry at a young age, 16, 15, 14. This particular speaker talked about her sister who was pregnant by the age of 11 because she went to I guess it was an orientation or initiation camp. And it just made me feel very lucky to be a woman in the United States, and opened up my eyes to a lot of things that are happening around the world that I don't really realize, and I realize how much that I take for granted. And I am currently raising daughters in the United States, and I don't want them to be blind to their opportunities and to the gifts that they have just by being in the United States. I watched a few others that had to do with, finding the right job. If you find things that you love to do, you never work a day in your life, things like that. But I wanted to comment on the ones that made more of an impact on me. I've watched TED Talks quite a bit, actually. My kids have watched them at school, and they're the ones who introduced me to them in the beginning, about a year and a half ago. And I am always interested in listening to the speakers. There was one other one that I watched, and I chose it because it had a lot to do with what I do as a career. And it was a physician who had been electrocuted while he was young, a young man, and he'd lost both of his legs and one arm, and he was working in the palliative care industry, and he really talked about living life, not necessarily preparing for death, but what are you going to do every day to live your life to the fullest. And that really struck me as well, because I find that is what I see a lot in my career. Most people are regretting what they didn't do and regretting things they hadn't done or hadn't said, the relationships they didn't mend before they lost their loved one. So that one really hit close to home for me, and I was really appreciative to that speaker for that talk. So that I think answers all of the questions that we had for this week's chapter, and I'm thank you for listening.